Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a spectacular disc for anyone who likes big, luscious, romantic, opulent, decadent, stunningly melodic, romantic music that you may not know at all. I'm talking about orchestral pieces, and there aren't many of them, by Franz Schreker. Schreker, screamer, or something like that. Shrek, that kind of thing. All right, who was Schreker? Schreker was, let's see what his dates were here. They were 1878 to 1934. He was known during his lifetime as an opera composer, really one of the most popular in Germany, as popular as Richard Strauss or any of those people. He was working extensively during that same time, the first decades of the 20th century. Schreker was Jewish, and when the Nazis came to power in 1933, he had a teaching position. I believe it was at the Hochschule für Musik in Berlin. He was director. He was dismissed. He was shamed, and he died of a heart attack very, very sadly. I mean, he was treated dismally, and he was sort of the poster child for late romantic decadence and sexual depravity in opera. And, that's a good thing, I think, at least for us now. But his life was very sad as a result of that. He wrote one opera after another, and his style evolved rather interestingly over that period, but we don't have to go into that. As far as orchestral works go, there are very, very few. Most of them derive from his operas. It's about 3 discs worth, 2 or 3 discs worth. Chandos had a series of them, not very good series of them, but there have been some fine recordings of his works in the recent decades since his operas began to be revived. And this one, featuring JoAnn Falletta and the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra on Naxos, which I can play samples of, is a knockout. It is probably the best single Schreker disc you can get if you want your Schreker. And you do. Believe me, you do. This disc contains 3 works. The Birthday of the Infanta, which is a ballet pantomime, the Suite, the Prelude to a Drama, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and the Romantic Suite, which is actually just, fortunately, it's an early work, not his most individual, but incredibly beautiful Romantic Suite. 4 movements, 4 wonderful romantic movements. You get an idyll, a scherzo, an intermezzo, and a dance. And wow, are they lovely. I mean, his music is just, how to describe Schreker's music? Okay, well, you can listen to it and hear it for yourself, but it consists of sort of a few basic elements that, as always is the case with great composers, they manage to personalize in their own way. First of all, there is the incredibly opulent sheen of his music. One of his most famous pieces is a chamber symphony for like 13 solo instruments or 12 solo instruments, a small group. And it is absolutely one of the most luscious things you've ever heard in your life. He always used piano and harp and celesta and all of these exotic sort of color instruments to color his music. So part of his style consists of music in a almost Debussy-like impressionist vein, that sort of represents almost a dream state, this sort of dreamy, fluid, and harmonically somewhat advanced music. But on the other hand, there are just basic tunes, nice, basic, singable, diatonic tunes. That's what makes him a good opera composer, actually, or one of the things. And then there is this a very simple approach to rhythm. It's interesting, you hear his music and you find that his handling of rhythm is actually pretty conservative, and his use of coloristic elements, percussion and crazy woodwind instruments and things like that. It's very honest music. In other words, there's a certain conservatism in his style which offsets the sort of progressive elements, and when you put them together, there's a sweetness and an innocence to what he does that's very, very moving, very affecting. And you'll hear this for yourself. It's incredibly beautiful music. So we have this disc that has these 3 works. And the first one I want to talk to you about is the Prelude to a Drama. Now, the Prelude to a Drama is an extended version, sort of amplified and formalized in an ABA shape of the overture to his 1915 opera Die Gezeichneten. Die Gezeichneten means the branded or the stigmatized. I have no idea what that has to do with the actual plot. But the plot, the plot is so juicy. It takes place in Genoa. It's one of those Italian decadent Renaissance operas that they were all writing back then. There was a Florentine Tragedy by Zemlinsky and Violante by Korngold. All of these things. They take place in Italy, I guess, for the same reason that all of Shakespeare's plays take place in Italy, because Italy was where, sex happened. It seemed to be the only place in Europe where sex was going on, and you could have these wonderfully decadent plots. Anyway, so we're in Genoa for Die Gezeichneten, and in Genoa there is a ugly hunchback nobleman named Alviano, who is in love with the daughter of the podesta named Carlotta. Now, Carlotta is a painter. She is an artiste, and she sees through the ugliness of Alviano's physical form to the beauty of his soul, and she wants to capture his soul in a painting. She also doesn't want to have any kind of physical relationship with a man, which is a good thing because she has a heart condition, and we'll get to that in a moment. So, meanwhile, Alviano is a wealthy nobleman. He has gussied up this island off the coast of Genoa that he calls Elysium, as in Freude, schöne Götterfunken, Tochter aus Elysium, paradise. And he wants to donate it to the people of Genoa to be used as sort of a public park. However, unbeknownst to Alviano, the dissolute younger noblemen of Genoa have been kidnapping the young girls of notable Genoan families and sexually abusing them in an underground pleasure grotto on the island of Elysium. And Alviano knows nothing about this. But there is the head dissolute Genoan nobleman is a guy named Tamari. And despite being named after a Japanese condiment, he is actually an Italian nobleman. And he is not in love, he's in lust with Carlotta. And he vows that he's going to have her. Well, I'll bet you can see where this is leading, right? So without too much ado, it goes on for 3 acts and all kinds of, things happen. Tamari kidnaps Carlotta and has his way with her. And when the people of Genoa find out, Alviano finds out, and Alviano stabs Tamari to death. And Carlotta, who has had her first sexual experience, naturally, sort of like Gilda in Rigoletto, she discovers that she kind of likes it. And instead of calling for Alviano, who believes that she loves him, she calls for Tamari. And because she has a heart condition, the excitement is too much for her, and she drops dead. And Alviano goes insane. That's the plot. It's terrific. And the opera's made quite a comeback in the past couple of decades. It's had several major productions, and there's a DVD of it. And the music is gorgeous. Oh my God, this is beautiful music. I wanted to play you sort of the beginning of the allegro of the overture, just so you can get a sense of Schreker's wonderful combination of sort of mystery and romance and wonderful singing melodies. And oh my God, it's gorgeous. It's a huge orchestra with all kinds of stuff in it. And here it is. Something else, huh? I mean, it's just beautiful. It's about 18 minutes long, and you will love every second of it. I guarantee it. Now, The Birthday of the Infanta is a ballet pantomime, and the story is by Oscar Wilde, and it's the same story that Zemlinsky set as his opera Der Zwerg, the dwarf. There are a lot of like dwarves and hunchbacks in these stories because they're really all about, you know, beauty and ugliness and the contrast between beauty of soul and ugliness of physical form. And The Birthday of the Infanta is a completely nihilistic little ballet pantomime about a psychotic princess who treats her pet dwarf as a toy, although he's in love with her. And she ignores him completely. And it's really very similar. I mean, the whole plot is basically sort of like the first scene of Salome, you know, where Naraboth, the guard, is in love with Salome and he stabs himself and drops dead in front of her and she just ignores him and steps over him. Well, that's what happens in The Birthday of the Infanta. He kills himself and the princess just says, oh, now I need to get another toy. You know, she's a completely vile little self-centered narcissistic creature. And not the only narcissist in politics we've seen recently, I might add. But in any case, it's another absolutely gorgeous piece of music. And the suite is, again, about 20 minutes worth of music in a bunch of small sections. I'm just going to play the opening. And again, you'll hear that wonderful sweetness and innocence almost that characterizes Schreker's music, even when it's at its most decadent. He's not a chromatic composer like Strauss was. He's an impressionist composer more than anything else. And he's not a contrapuntist at all. I mean, he's a chord guy. It's all about the beauty of sound. In fact, his first big opera was called Die Ferne Klang, the distant sound. It's about a dreamy guy who's running around in search of a distant sound that he's heard at some point. And what a pretty sound it is, along the way to him dying or whatever happens, who knows. Anyway, here's the opening of The Birthday of the Infanta, performed by the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra under JoAnn Falletta on Naxos. So you get it, right? I mean, you can't not love this music if you're into late 20th century or early 20th century, late 19th century romanticism. It is stunning stuff, really, really stunning stuff. And then the Romantic Suite is, like I said, more conservative, very beautiful four movement, fairly normal by Schreker's standards. If you enjoy this music, then the next piece that you'll want to get is some disc that has the chamber symphony, which I think I'll talk about at some point separately because you really need to hear that too. It's so pretty. Wow. Anyway, there's nothing more to be said. There's nothing more I need to say about this music. It's self-evidently stunning. And this, as I said, is probably the best recording available to introduce you to Schreker's sound world. Now, most of these operas now have been recorded if you want complete operas. Die Gezeichneten was given a gorgeous recording as part of the Entartete Musik series on Decca. And it's still around. And so maybe at some point we can talk about that and a few of his other operas too. I mean, they're really special works. And they deserve their revivals. They really have. I mean, some of them are very, very stage worthy and consistently just like shiny, bright objects. That's what they are. They're so incredibly pretty. I mean, if he hadn't been German, the poor man, he could have been as popular as someone like Ravel, That's what his style most resembles, I think. That sort of fantasy, enchanted world that's presented in orchestration of extreme refinement and high polish, but it's all on dedicated to the idea of the fantastic and the childlike. And my God, I just can't get over how pretty it is. Anyway, here it is, JoAnn Falletta, the Berlin, sorry, not the Deutsches, the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra on Naxos, doing 3 fabulous orchestral works by Schreker. Keep on listening, folks, and take care.